Everybody knows how successful Rate My Agent has been in the Australian market, penetrating the majority of agents in the country on our platform, and approximately a third of those paying, so that Australia is profitable. That's the easy part. The big prize is if we can penetrate the US market, even to the same extent that we've got in Australia, then the prize is, as some of our previous releases have shown, more than $300 million in revenue to the bottom line. Well, we hope the bottom line. So we've been examining ways of improving our penetration in the US, where we have pivoted with our strategy, and as we announced recently, we pivoted to have a wholesale and what I call a wholesale and what I call a retail model. In other words, say to the brokerages themselves, to the real estate agencies, the head agencies, to say to them, look, we will give you a wholesale product where we show you the data and the feedback on the whole market for all of your agents as a whole, which will raise your profile, which will enable you to market the company better. In return, we want to then be able to upsell to your individual agents. This was what I call my wholesale and my retail strategy. And fantastically, we just announced that we had signed Remax in the US, which has 75,000 agents under their umbrella. The number's unbelievable because the whole of Australia only has about, in our estimation, 35,000 active agents, active meaning agents who have sold one property in the last year. So the ability to sign up a massive agency like Remax is a big win for us. The reason it's a big win is that while it's a wholesale model to Remax, in other words, we get a wholesale revenue stream, it gives us a license to play with individual agents and to sign them up with the imprimatur of Remax themselves. So we're not going out to individual agents and trying to sign them one by one, which is what we did in Australia. Successfully, by the way, but we don't have the time for that. So since we announced that ASX signing of Remax, and we then did a webinar, I've been fielding questions from investors along the lines of, that's great, fantastic, we see the new strategy is working, but two things. How many other agencies are you talking to, and how many are we going to get signed up? Because our estimation is there's probably 800,000 active agents in the US that we would be interested in. So, and the second question I've been fielding is, once those brokerages are signed up, what's your track to signing up individual agents and upselling them individually on a revenue model? So let me answer the first question first, which is, what does our pipeline look like now that we've sold Remax? Well, first of all, we think that as Remax gets rolled out, that other agencies are going to pick it up very quickly on a sort of fear of missing out basis, but also wondering, well, how did they get so much market penetration and coverage? But to answer the question more directly, we have probably at least half a dozen discussions going on at the moment with major brokerages. Now, some of them by US standards are small, 10,000 real estate agents, 20,000 real estate agents. They're still massive, by the way, by Australian standards, where you've got 35,000 for the whole country. But one agency we're talking to, one brokerage we're talking to, has a bigger agent population than Remax alone. In other words, more, in this case, more than 100,000 agents under their umbrella. So how long will it take us to sign these and other agencies? I don't know, but I'm pretty hopeful, given what I know about where those discussions are, that we will sign at least one before 30th of June and maybe two, and the rest of calendar 26. The second question, and by the way, signing up those brokerages on a wholesale basis is no mean feat, because we've convinced the upper echelon about the merit of having all the agency and agents' data on listings, on sales, on reviews of their performance is really important. But the most important thing for me is it's a leading because of that, it's a leading indicator for how we're going to be able to sell up agents themselves underneath that agency umbrella. So what is our plan for that? Our plan for that is that as we've completed the rollout of, in this case, let's say Remax, but all others, we will then jointly, the brokerage and ourselves, market to individual agents under those umbrellas and upsell them in terms of our ability to make them stand out in the market and be renowned as local experts. So that means taking their data, not just reviews, not just listings, but all sorts of data and market intelligence and so forth, and linking that into their social media on a consistent basis. This is pretty important because when people choose an agent, they'll choose something that's top of mind. And we want our agents to be top of mind by having a constant feed into their social media, not only on their performance, but on what they think about what's happening in the market, their restaurant reviews, anything that's of interest that will keep them top of mind. At the moment, we do that with reviews, and it's been very successful in Australia, but the reviews and the listings are what I think of as a sugar hit. In other words, as you get one, you get it on your social media, but you might get one listing every 6 months, you might get one listing a year, you might get one sale every 6 months. So what we're aiming to do is to put the power of that social media coverage into the hands of individual agents. And if they want to have a feed into their contact base and into the market generally on a weekly basis, they can do it. On a monthly basis, they can do it. And we'll help them with some of that content that came out of the acquisition we made of Curated Social, which is pulling a lot of that industry and data together so that agents can pick and choose what they would like to say to the market. So it's pretty interesting, I think. We think our pivot on our strategic pivot is working, but as my mother used to say, one swallow doesn't make a spring. So we've got a bit of work to do between now and June, but I'm hopeful that if we can sign another one or two before 30 June, and we've got some traction on signing up individual agents, that people will see that it is working and that it probably is going to work at a faster rate than what it took us to grow Australia. Anyway, this is in addition to the webinar we did, which is already on the ASX, and the announcement we made of Remax signing. But I just wanted to kill a couple of the questions that I'm getting constantly from investors and potential investors. So thanks for staying with us.